and welcome back to this tutorial series where we are covering the various settings within Fantasy Grounds Unity. In this short video, we are going to cover the Accounts tab within the Fantasy Grounds Unity's Updater utility. On this tab, there are only two options, Link Steam or Link Paizo. And unfortunately, I've been mispronouncing it for the earlier portions of the series. The Link Steam option allows you to link your Steam account to your Fantasy Grounds store account. And if you regularly purchase modules through Steam, this is going to be a requirement if you want Fantasy Grounds to be able to automatically download any of those items you've purchased. In fact, I don't actually know of a way to manually download any purchases you have made through Steam. So if you don't want to link the two accounts together, your best bet is to purchase your modules, core rules, supplements, or token, map, and portrait packs directly through the Fantasy Grounds shop. When you click the Link Steam button, you will be taken to the Steam account synchronization page in the Fantasy Grounds shop, which allows you in turn to link your Steam account directly to the Fantasy Grounds store. I'm not actually going to go through that whole process here because it's relatively straightforward. Where I have the Remove Steam Link button, you will see something like a Create Steam Link or Enable Steam Link. And when you click on that, it will go through and take you to the Steam authentication page where you put in your username and your password for Steam. And if you happen to have Steam protection enabled, you will then be prompted for your Steam Guard code. Once you've done that, you will be brought back to this page. And when that happens, you will see something similar to what I have on the screen. Now, the first time you do this, it is going to take some time for the link to actually physically take place and sync everything down. So it's best to go through and take a break. And there are a couple of things that will happen. If you purchased Fantasy Grounds Unity's application itself through Steam, you will now be able to find the license key within the Fantasy Grounds shop. The other thing that will happen is it will update that shop to reference any modules you've purchased through Steam. So now the shop has an awareness of what you've bought through Steam. You can try to speed things up, specifically when you click on the Refresh Steam Purchases button on this page. However, if you've just recently linked the accounts, this might not work right away. But once the accounts are linked, a few things will now be possible. The first is that any new purchase you make on Steam will, after a short period of time, sync to the Fantasy Grounds store. This in turn will allow the Fantasy Grounds updater to be able to pull down those purchases. The second is that if you've purchased Fantasy Grounds Unity on Steam, then that will get linked to your Fantasy Grounds account, such that you can now go to either location in order to acquire your license key. This is going to be required for the license key entry box shown in the video where I cover the Basic tab. New modules, rule sets, supplements, and token, portrait, or map packs that you've purchased through Steam will, as I've already stated after a short period of time, link to your Fantasy Grounds account store, thus making them visible to the Fantasy Grounds updater. Once it does, the next time you launch Fantasy Grounds, the Check for Updates button will be highlighted with a red box wrapping around it, indicating to you that new updates are ready. This is going to include new Steam purchases, or new Fantasy Grounds shop purchases, or new Paizo purchases, which we'll get to in a minute. In relation to the Link Paizo button, this does the same thing, but instead it relates to any rule books, supplements, or modules that you've purchased from the Paizo shop, mainly related to Pathfinder or Starfinder, as I believe that's the two games that they have available right now. Regardless of which rule set you're purchasing modules for, they will not be automatically pulled down to your Fantasy Grounds Unity instance until you link the accounts. And thus, the process works very similar to the way that we linked our Steam account. When you click this button, you will be redirected to a Paizo account synchronization page, but unlike Steam, you won't be able to get an automatic redirect to the authorization service for Paizo. This is because they handle things a little differently, and just follow the steps below the auth token request box to get access to your authorization token. Of course, this assumes you have an account at paizo.com where you have purchased some modules. Once you get the authorization token and you enter it into this particular text field and click the Authorize Account button, it will take a few minutes once again for the synchronization to kick off, at which time you will be able to reload Fantasy Grounds Unity and get the indication that updates are pending. As per the Steam sync, the updater will now see your Paizo purchases for anything that is compatible with Fantasy Grounds Unity, and thus prompt you that you can now download them through the Check Updates option. But with that completes this particular tab, so let's move on to the next video in the series.